How much do you know about the mob?
Too much.
Yeah.
But I grew up around that crap. You know, my uncle was in it. You know, people Google my name. Oh, shit, Ben Mallah. He got all his money from drugs. That wasn't me. That was back in, I was like 12 years old. And
Yeah.
anyway, when you grew up in New York, you grew up around all that shit.
Sure.
You name every type of criminal activity, I've seen it and grew up around it. And now I'm looking at one.
Now, when you're 12, though, how did you understand what the mob was? Did you,
trouble.
or you just
you
like...
grew up around it,
yeah.
you know? Your kids in school, you go to friends, kids in school with kids, and their parents and the family are all mobbed up, and, you know, it's really a very ugly life. It really is.
You said your uncle's in the... He was in the mob.
His whole life, pretty much.
What was his, like, ranking in the mob? What did he do?
I think his name was Benny the Jew. And he would be like the money guy, you know? He needed money, he needed to borrow money, loan shark and gambling. He moved a lot of drugs, too, I know that. I've seen newspaper articles. And he's probably spent half his life in the damn state penitentiary or Fed penitentiary or whatever. I didn't visit him, so. I'd see him when he got out once in a while, you know, but I stayed away from that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it wasn't, I always knew that crime wasn't the life for me.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm not a violent person. You know, God damn it. You know, all that shit about hurting people, and it's just, you know, it's not human.
Is it close to how it is portrayed in the movies? Like you usually see it where they're going to...
It's worse. In real life, it's worse. In
Really?
real life, it's worse. I mean, because you never know when somebody's going to come after you, or, you know, there's no honor amongst thieves or crooks and murderers and all that. I mean, it's just all about money.
You ever have any close calls or hear about anything crazy that happened?
I mean, you know, I was around a lot of crap that went on. I was too young. Luckily, I got out of New York when I was 17, and I joined the Army. So, you know, I did get in a little trouble when I was young. So luckily, back then they would take you in the Army if you didn't have like a violent criminal record. And I was not a violent person. But, you know, I hung out with the wrong crowd, and you did what you had to do to survive. I grew up in the slums and really lousy, poor family. And, you know, so I went to court one day, and the judge actually recognized me and remembered me from previous meetings that we've had in court. And I never forget the day.
Jeez.
You know, I'm in court. I think I just turned 17, and I got in trouble. And so I had the bailiff, you know what a bailiff is? Mm-hmm. The guy that works in the court, takes you away to jail. Mm-hmm. So I had the bailiff on my right and I had the recruiter on my left. I set it up that day where I came to court with the recruiter to prove to the judge I'm going in the Army. If he permits me, you know, lets me off. So we stand in front of the judge, and the judge goes, "Okay, big shot, what are you going to do?" Because he already knows I'm there with the recruiter and everything. Excuse me. I swear to God, I saluted the judge. And I said, "Can we go now?" And that was it. And that saved my life. Because otherwise I'd be dead. I'd be dead or rotting away in jail.
Negotiating since 17.
Probably a lot earlier than that.
That's interesting.
I ran away from home when I was 12 years old. I was a big 12-year-old.
Oh, why'd you do that?
Not as big as him, but, you know.
Why'd you run away?
I can't.
Just in a laughing and crying.
I came from a very dysfunctional family. I mean, my mother was very abusive. All right, and she had mental illness, and she was basically a raving lunatic to beat the shit out of you for no reason. My father, he was pretty much the opposite. He didn't curse, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and he didn't stand up to my mother like he should have. He should have put that bitch in her goddamn place. But anyway, they got divorced when I was young, blah, 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 and there was always fighting going on, and anyway, I got stuck with her. And, you know, eventually when I was 12 years old, I was hanging. I wouldn't go home. I'd stay in the streets or go to my friends' houses and, you know, got involved with doing the mischief in the neighborhood. It was pretty rough growing up in New York, you know, in Far Rockaway and the projects where it was really sad. So, what was your question?
Why'd you run away?
Why did I run away? Because it was a horrible place to live. It was a little shitbox house in a really dangerous neighborhood. And my mother was nuts.
And she didn't care when you ran away?
She didn't care when I was there. She was probably happy I ran away. And, you know, so, you know, I did what I had to do. I lived on, you know, friends in the streets. I sleep on the train. You know, maybe we had very long rides on the train in New York. You could get on the train at Far Rockaway, take it all the way to uptown Manhattan. That'd be like a 2 or 3 hour ride. So you can get 3 hours of sleep going that way and going back, providing you don't get robbed. You know, but
did no adult see you and just say like, hey, where are your parents? Where are you going? No one questioned it?
Back, you got to understand,
Yeah.
I'm 57 now.
Sure.
I'm talking about, I was born in 65. You're talking about 1977.
Sure.
In 1977, throughout the 80s, New York was a sewer. All right, that's why Trump was able to do all that crap in the 80s because everything was garbage. It was down. It was crime ridden. I mean, the mafia, the drugs, the crime, everything crime you can imagine consumed New York. It was a cesspool. So, I mean, nobody ever questioned my age when I was young. It was just something nobody cared,
And how did you fund your life when you were 12?
I mean, hustling, Basically, back then we had what we call a tray bag. You know what a tray bag is? Back then, things were cheaper. You could go with $3. Tray means three, by the way. You could take $3. You know the right house to go to. You knock at the door. And when you put the deadbolt lock in the door, it's a hole. It's empty. There's no lock in it. There might be other locks, but there's an empty hole there. You put your $3 in the hole, and this little bag comes out with $3 worth of marijuana. But back in those days, you take the bag, papers didn't cost much, and you clean it up, you roll them up, you get 5 joints. And you could sell those joints for $1 a piece. So now my $3 just turned into $5. Jamaicans had the whole corner on that market, and they were pretty generous. So then you take the $5 and you go back and you get a nickel bag. You know what a nickel bag is?
I'm assuming $5 for this.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Very good. This guy's pretty
Turn
good.
that into 9.
Catches on.
Yeah.
Quick, yeah.
So basically, you take the 5, and really, because I would be such a pain in the ass to them, they would actually threaten me to get away from the door. I keep looking in the bag and giving it back. No, I need a bigger bag. No, it's got too many seeds in it. No, it's got stems in it. And eventually, I'd get a bag where I can get 10 skinny joints out of it. So now my 3 turned into 5, and my 5 turned into 10. And all I had to do was go to the A train and sit in the last car. Because on the last car in the New York City subway when I was growing up, that's where everything went on. You ever been to New York?
How'd you know
You
that?
ever been on a subway?
Yeah.
All right, so the trains are like 12 cars, 10 cars. How do you know that? Everybody knows this.
Really?
Yeah, I started smoking when I was 12.
Really?
Yeah, I've
What-
been smoking since I was
This is
12.
like a
Yeah.
common thing.
12 years old?
Yeah.
12 is old.
12?
Yeah, that's middle school. Yeah.
12
That's like-
years old.
12 is old in New York
Yes.
when I grew up. And basically, you just sell it. You roll it up. You sell it in the last car, the A train. There's always people going to the city, going to work. They want to get a quick buzz before they hit to go to work. And it was easy to sell. And it was pretty safe, in the train.
So
we
you
had
transact in the train.
pretty much. You sit in the last car and loose joints. Or I used to do it also in Washington Park, right by the Statue of Liberty, down on Wall Street. I took a job, I lied about my age, I took a job as a foot messenger back then. We'd have computers. We used to have to deliver millions. They trusted kids with millions of dollars of stocks and bonds and deposits to be a messenger and go all around Wall Street. You go to this building, go to that building, you make a deposit here, you go to this bank here, and that's what I do. And then during lunch, I'd sit in the park and sell loose joints.
So that's how you sustain yourself. That's really
I hustled. Eventually, I got up to £1 a week.
Were you worried
pound a
were you
week?
worried,
That
though,
was
about,
different.
Like,
I was
Well, hold on a second. Wait.
I was already like
Yeah.
16 by then.
All right.
I was selling it by the ounce too, so it wasn't that hard.
were you not worried about going to jail or like the police? Or,
Listen, the cops
No?
don't even. One time I got
Weed?
busted
Yeah.
on the train. You know what the cop did?
All right.
He took the weed away. He kept it. It wasn't like that. Everything was corrupt when I was a kid.
Sure.
I was born in a cesspool of corruption and criminals. In New York, everything, you got away with anything, especially if you grease somebody. It's the way it was. It's all about the hustle, baby, the hustle. I grew up with pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers, killers, all that shit, burglars, you name it, everything. Cars was a big thing, stealing cars. That was a big thing where I was growing up.
So you're scraping by when you're around 12 years old. What about education? Were you in school or anything like that?
Believe it or not, when I was very young, my mother she was nuts in a lot of ways, but she wasn't stupid. And when I was very young, up until about the age of 9 or 10, from first grade to fifth grade, I actually went to private school because she would go in there and say, "Oh, I'm a poor Jew. Can you give us a scholarship and let my son in and all this shit?" And then it worked out, but I had to change schools every year because part of the deal was they said, "Fine, we'll give your son a free education, but you have to volunteer at the school and work there." Well, that fucked everything up, part of my language, because she was nuts. So she'd come in there, and the teacher would come to me and says, "Benjamin, you're a nice boy, but your mother, we can't deal with her. You got to go." And she'd get me kicked out of school. But then she'd find another school to take me in. So I got a good education for 5 years of my life. And I never went one day to high school. Eventually, I kind of went to junior high for a little while. I got back with my father and my sister. I got bounced around between Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Hell's Kitchen. But, I went to junior high, but I never made it to high school, not one day. I knew how to get high. I wanted to go to school and learn for.
Yeah.
But why did you stop at weed?
I could teach in high school. I could teach how to get high in high school.
But why stop at weed? You mentioned like pimps and like all these other things.
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't you?
I wasn't a big
further
weed
into that?
smoker or nothing, I mean, dib and dab, but no, I was more into the money part of it.
Okay.
But then I saw that if I tried to go expand into cocaine or heroin, like my uncle, he moved millions of dollars worth of heroin. If I started getting involved with that, then it gets very, very dangerous, very dangerous. It's a whole other world I don't want to be part of. So I didn't go into hard drugs or anything like that. That's the death sentence.
But by the time you were 16 and moving, like you said, about a pound a week, like I know that's like a ton. That is like
Not if you sell them in 61-ounce bags. It's not really.
Was it highly profitable?
What happened was, I worked down in the village where I worked I took a job working for a company that was in the clothing industry. It was, they actually owned Chaps by Ralph Lauren. They own a lot of divisions of different types of clothing. They had designers and all this stuff. And my job, we didn't have computers back then. You know what a telex machine is? I used to have to communicate feed telexes to a machine that would communicate to Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, and I'd sit there like an idiot feeding tapes and running copies for people and running errands, and I had a job. But I was around all the designers, and the designers in the village, the people that design clothes for Ralph Lauren and all of them, let me tell you, I've yet to see too many people that were really good artistically that didn't indulge in some sort of vice. Anyway, they all like to smoke weed in the village. So they used to ask me, "Hey, we get some good stuff?" And yeah, I can get you whatever you want. So eventually, each person would end up buying me, like 16 different people would each end up buying like an ounce. An ounce wasn't that big. It was a nice little bag rolled up, and and so I have about 16 clients, about roughly, give or take, and once a week they all want an ounce, and I'd have to go to these divisions anyway all over New York to deliver stuff. So I do it while I'm doing my deliveries till the vice president find out, and then he fired me.
Interesting. So you're doing that, and then you have the court date, which then
eventually I did something that I shouldn't have. I did the guy fired me. So I kind of took revenge on the company and got caught.
What was the revenge?
The revenge.
What was the revenge?
For shutting down my weed business. The revenge was I got a bunch of big tough guys from Rockaway to go and help me clean out my desk. But we accidentally cleaned out about other desks too and stuff. So...
What do you mean by cleaning out desks? You mean
when you get fired from a job, you take your stuff with you in a box and you get the hell out?
Right.
Well, we did the whole goddamn office. We cleaned everybody out.
Oh, my gosh.
That was in the Empire State Building, too.
Wow.
Anyway, so, I got caught because I wasn't thinking, I didn't figure, well, of course they're going to know it's the last guy to get fired.
Right.
Anyway, so they put two and two together, and I had brought a bunch of big, giant African-American guys with me to help me. And anyway, so I got in trouble for that. And that's what caused me to I had to really make a decision that, the judge was going to put me in a real jail for, like an adult for probably 18 months. And I didn't want to do that. So I joined the Army. And the Army saved my life, and the Army took good care of me, sent me to Germany, taught me, some good office skills.